Welcome to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of DAX Machina. Joining me in the studio tonight is Robbie Rip Rains, host of What's Really Out There, Steve Wildman Monrotis, the owner of Steve's Pub and Grub, if you guys are familiar with the Wild Hunt books. And joining us in the studio again tonight is Miss Naomi Finn, storyteller and author. She is an awesome fixture of the show. We miss having her on a nightly basis, but we are so happy to have her back because we are digging into some territory that I really don't think has gotten enough coverage. When I was kind of doing my research on this show, it surprised me how little was really out there. And Naomi is the one that first actually introduced me to this story, and it's to me it's a really compelling one, and it's really not that far from my backyard. So Naomi, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us your YouTube channel. And want to make sure everybody ever goes over there and gives her a like and subscribe. But give us a little introduction on this story.
Okay, well, hello, I'm Naomi Finn. Everybody knows that who's ever heard my show. Hey, I'm Naomi Finn. And I do have a YouTube channel. It's a storytelling channel, Naomi Finn Open to Doubt. It's about stories like this that may or may not have a lot of fact behind them or a lot of evidence behind them. This one in particular I find really fascinating because I stumbled across it by accident because of my love of gardening. And the reason I say that is because Moss Mountain, after which this particular incident is named, is actually the estate of P. Allen Smith, who's one of my favorite PBS gardeners. And in fact, it's one of the most beautiful estates in the country. And he's got the most gorgeous gardens you've ever seen. Clearly, he's a horticulturist, so he should. And every year, he hosts a Halloween party. And he tells the story about the ghosts of the men who were killed on Beaver Island, which sits right there in the Arkansas River, over which his estate looks, and that their ghosts come up out of the water on Halloween night to look for the people who killed them. Oh, well, I thought, that's a heck of an interesting story. I'm going to have to find something out about this. So
Sounds like the plot of Scooby-Doo Zombie Island.
I know, right? Ruh-roh. My favorite moment in Scooby-Doo back in the early 70s was when they opened the Mystery Machine and all the smoke rolled out. Yeah, I think they take that out. I don't think you get to see that anymore. But anyway... So I started doing some research on it, and I discovered that anybody that's ever seen a Nuttall woodpecker, that is named after a man named Thomas Nuttall. And he was born in England in the 1880s, I believe, or 1780s, excuse me. And he came to America, to the United States, in 1808. And he met Benjamin Smith Barton, who was the foremost authority on flora and fauna in North America at the time. And he encouraged him to go out, and because Nuttall had been an apprentice in a print shop, and that was just, he knew that was not his cup of tea. He didn't want to do that. So Barton, I think it's Barton, names escape me. I am the worst with names. I still call my kids hey you because I'm afraid I'll get it wrong. But anyway, he sent him out. One of the expeditions he went on was with Lewis and Clark up into the Great Lakes in Canada and a little ways down the Mississippi. Another expedition that he's very famous for is he did a solo walk through Tennessee, Kentucky, the Carolinas, and part of Virginia. And he actually wrote what was the definitive textbook on the flora and fauna of this country at the time. And he's clearly well known for his ornithology. He actually has a bird named after him. But the thing about Thomas Nuttall was he was from England, and in 1812, with as they say, the winds of war blowing, he headed back to England. because if he'd stayed here in this country, he probably would have ended up getting what is it when they take him off a ship and they force him to be a or a sailor.
Press gang?
Shanghai.
Shanghai.
No, pressed is into
Conscripted.
conscripted. That's the word. Thank you. And so he went back to England and he stayed there until 1815. And he came back and his buddy Ben said, I want you to go down the Ohio River and then down the Mississippi and then explore the Arkansas River as far as you can go. And he put together a crew of men, and that's what he did. But unfortunately, he was English, and he was heading through French territory, and the Napoleonic Wars had only been over for about 12 years. And we had just had a war with England, so he wasn't really well received by his men. And I often kind of think that I've thought about that a lot as I've been researching this for the last year or so, in that I think that may have a lot to do with why he was not actually given there was not a lot of credence in his story. It also didn't help that in July of 1818, as they're going down the Mississippi, most of the men contracted malaria. And as you guys know, or I assume, and you probably, at least two of you probably know more about it than I do, is that malaria, it once you get it, it can come back, and it hangs on, and you have these lifetime of symptoms. And so the guys are heading down the Mississippi. They all contract malaria. They're not in the best of moods. They're traveling with this Englishman who's pretty much just pushed every button they have by complaining about the French and the because they're going down the Ohio River, so they've got French settlements all around them, because that entire area was originally settled by the French. And to make matters a million times worse, he's actually getting along with all the natives. And in fact, Thomas Nuttall went a long way towards trying to improve relations and to make Europeans see the First Nations people here basically as human beings. So they get down the Mississippi, they're heading up the Arkansas River, they're not feeling on top of it. They're going in and out of territory that may or may not be friendly. Some of the natives they get along with really well, some of them they didn't. Some of them tried to steal their horses, and some of them actually helped them and guided them. And as a result of this, they always had to be careful where they camped and how they camped. And they opted for Beaver Island because they felt it was a safe bet that they wouldn't be able to. Is that coming through my headphone or just my headphone?
I hear it too, but I don't know where it's originating.
That's weird.
I hear it. What is it?
Sounds like somebody talking.
It's God.
Or a TV
it's
or
God.
something.
I don't hear anything without a headphone in, so I don't think it's coming from my place.
It's weird. Huh. It stopped. Anyway, so they've camped on this island. Most of them are still feeling pretty rotten. They're camped all around. They're not camped like, it's not the Boy Scouts. They're not all lined up together. There's some along the edges of the camp, some in the center. And Nuttall wakes up in the middle of the night to the sounds of men screaming. And through the remnants of the fire, he can see very tall beings walking around the camp. And these beings are literally picking these men up and throwing them and tearing them apart. And men are literally being dismembered in front of him. And at some point, from either the shock of what he's seeing or because he's still struggling with the malaria, or maybe he just gave up. He just passed out. And the next morning, he wakes up and he crawls out into camp, and it looks like, it's a massacre. There's body parts and blood and internal organs all over the place. A lot of the men are just completely missing. And he's sitting there by the fire, and he hears a moan off under the brush, and he goes over there and he finds a survivor. Man has no idea what he's seen or what's happened. He was knocked out immediately. The scrounges around. I believe there were a total of 5 survivors. There were either 4 subscribers plus Nuttall, or 4 subscribers with him, and I don't remember which it was, but there were 4 or 5 survivors. And what Nuttall reported was he saw exceptionally tall beings on 2 legs walking around the camp, and they were what was attacking his men. Now, a lot of people have latched onto that and said, well, he had malaria, and it was probably bears. He's an Englishman. What does he know about the wilderness in this country? But that's not true. Thomas Nuttall actually had quite a lot of experience, more experience than most people. He'd traveled the Great Lakes. He'd been up in Canada. He knew the flora and fauna of this country. He wasn't what most people today would have thought an Englishman would be. He wasn't a dandy. He had spunk and grit, and unfortunately, he just happened to be traveling with a lot of Americans at a point when that accent might have thrown him off a bit. And I think I think that may have had a little bit to do with how and why people felt the way they did about him. And now he went to his grave maintaining that it was not bears. Most experts over the years have decided that that's all it could be. There are a few people who thought maybe it was UFOs. Some people, I had no idea at the time, but I found out later that there's actually been quite a few Dogman sightings in and around the Little Rock area, and Moss Mountain is not that far from Little Rock.
Well, it's also part of the same watershed that feeds into Boggy Creek.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are a lot of Dogman sightings from down in that area of Arkansas, but there's also a lot of Bigfoot sightings.
I particularly think this was a Bigfoot. I
do too.
I think that this was a Bigfoot attack. I don't think that this was Dogman. But the point is that there are so many other explanations that the experts, quote unquote, would not give because it might defile their precious.
Werewolf's got a good point. He says, yeah, those mass bear attacks happen all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard
just a rough gang of bears. They're like, they're in our territory. Let's go rough them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, bears don't generally congregate unless it's like salmon season, right?
Well, I've never seen a pack of bears.
And I wouldn't think that a bear would be walking on 2 feet if it was hunting either. I mean, I should
drop back down to all fours to walk off.
Right. It'll stand up to do the attack, but when it goes to the next. And the other thing is, what bear is going to attack and destroy the body, and then go to the next attack and destroy the body, and not,
a bear's going to drag something. If a bear kills, it's going to drag it off anyway. It's not going to kill and just leave it there.
Well,
exactly. It's going to bury it.
The reason I'm thinking it's Bigfoot instead of Dogman is most Dogman attack stories I've heard, they attack with claws and teeth. They're not dismembering attacks. They're not, picking something up and snapping their spine or tearing them limb from limb. Dogman's attacks generally involve a lot of slashing and biting attacks, whereas these Bigfoot attacks, these guys were spines snapped and arms torn out of socket. So I think this was more of a Bigfoot attack than a Dogman attack.
I agree with you. I agree 100%. And
Papa Bear says, on behalf of all bears everywhere, we had nothing to do with the Moss Mountain Massacre.
Well,
we appreciate you coming forward and setting the record straight, Papa Bear.
He now has an alibi. Okay.
The thing that frustrates me the most is how quickly they put it off to bear attacks when it doesn't match the behavior of bears. It just doesn't match them. They don't kill for pleasure. They kill to eat. Mm-hmm. And there's no indication that any of these people were eaten. They were just ripped apart.
Right.
And
most,
they don't.
I'm sorry, Nam. Go ahead.
If a bear is attacking a herd of deer, it stops with the one it catches because that's going to fill it up. It doesn't go around killing all the rest. Oh, well, I got to kill the rest of these to make them go away. That's not how it works. That's not how it works with most animals in nature. And so it just doesn't, the entire concept of it being a bear attack makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't hold
And
water.
of course, because I am I've had my own experience. I believe in Bigfoot. My mind immediately went to Bigfoot, and I don't understand why the Bigfoot community hasn't looked into this. I know that there's not a lot out there to research. You can read for free parts of Thomas Nuttall's journal from that expedition through the Library of Congress and a couple of other sites. You can actually purchase the book, or at least a digital copy of it, for a reasonable price. At my stage in life, reasonable is anything 25 cents or less, and I couldn't get it for that, so I didn't buy it. But you can read it, and of course it's written, and it's very old writing, the old style. They find 15 words to say a 3-word sentence and back then. But what I was able to read of it, it's really the entire trip from the moment they left and went down the Ohio River, the entire trip was fascinating. And it ended in, I believe, February of 1820, maybe. This happened in 1819. It was towards the end of their journey. So I believe it was over in February of 1820.
And like you were pointing out, Nuttall wasn't like some guy that just did all his research from a desk somewhere. He'd been out, and he traveled with Lewis and Clark. I mean, he knew what bears looked like.
He wasn't your British Museum guy, huh?
No.
Oh, no, we couldn't possibly exist.
I think Ryan's got a really good point there, DA.
What'd he say?
I got
Could
it up
be.
on the screen.
I mean, they certainly got the aggressive nature for it, or possibly even Gugway.
Well,
there have been Gugway sightings in the big thicket area of East Texas, and that ain't that far away.
And that would be my second choice over Dogman, too. I mentioned Dogman because when I first did the story, I got a lot of people who pointed out to me that there have been a lot of Dogman attacks in Arkansas, and I didn't realize it was that prevalent there. When I first heard, just to set the record straight, when I first heard about Dogman, I don't know, it's probably been 15 years ago now. First of all, I was like, yeah, right. Don't mess with my werewolves. I love werewolves. And I'm like, don't mess with my werewolves. But I also had this impression that Dogman attacks only happened about 100 miles each side of the Mississippi, that there were no Dogmen beyond that. Now, this would still come close to being within that range, but of course, I've learned later in life that that's not true. I mean, Maine's certainly farther than 100 miles east of the Mississippi, but I guess I had kind of not really researched it to realize that there were Dogman attacks in Arkansas. And that's why I bring it up now because, excuse me, I knew I shouldn't have drank that Fresca, my grapefruit soda. But the fact, my point is that Bigfoot, Gugway, Dogman, I mean, UFOs, there are a lot of things that this could be, but other than a bear. I mean, one of the other suggestions was that they were attacked by a hostile tribe of Native Americans. Now, that's possible because they did have hostile relations. But from everything that Thomas Nuttall wrote, 90% of their relationships were actually positive. he went a long way towards trying to convince the Europeans that were settling this nation that they were dealing with an intelligent, civilized race of people and to stop treating them like savages. And you know, I
The
just
same
don't think that it
conversation
was.
Jim Bridger had with Custer.
Yeah, yeah,
Jim Bridger told Custer, said the Sioux are a powerful nation. Treat them fair. You treat them
right.
with respect. Give these people the respect they're due. And Custer's like, no, 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 I'm fine. And that was how that worked.
Yeah, definitely. So that's basically the information that I got on them, on the
I know that some of the First Nations people, like some of their warriors, were pretty big dudes, but I still can't imagine, a big Sioux warrior or something like that could dismember another human being. That takes a lot of pounds per square inch to disarticulate somebody.
I want to say a
and
quick world thanks to QBot for the super sticker. You're awesome. But what I was going to add to your comment there, Steve, is I've seen some big dudes, but I've never met a guy that could tear another guy limb from limb. Chimpanzees have been known to do it, but I've never heard of a person tearing another person's arm off.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I have to agree with that. You're right. There are the DA was the one that pointed out that there were certain tribes back in the day where there were actually men who were 6 feet tall. And in 1819, I believe the average European was about the average European male was about 5'6".
Thanks, Miss
So
Lenita. Thank you for the super sticker. Yeah, that was the Osage, the Osage Indian. They said the average height of the Osage in 1865 was between 6.5 and 7 feet tall.
So definitely, it's possible that there were Native Americans that tall. And excuse me, he did, stress the fact that these were very tall things that he was seeing moving around. But like DA says, no matter how tall a man is, to be able to, dismember him with his own hands, that's just crazy.
Yeah, human beings just don't have the muscle density to do that. I've got a good friend who's 6'9". He's not capable of taking a man apart.
Yeah.
Now he could pick me up and run away with me pretty easily, and I'm 240, but he's not going to dismember me even if he tried.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
I agree. So
Ryan at Monster Radio had a good comment. He said if they were that tall, I brought that back up. If they were that tall, it would definitely add some credibility to the Patagonian giants. Yeah, I was researching the Osage for my new book, and that's the information I'm finding. And it wasn't like in some cryptid form. This was in a historical form that I was digging for answers in because I wanted historically accurate information to put in this new book series, Dark Frontiers. It wasn't any cryptid related research I was doing. It was just research on the Osage themselves, on their languages and customs. And the average warrior height for the Osage in the mid 1800s was between 6.5 and 7 feet tall, and that's a big fella even today.
Yeah.
We all know that height can be almost directly related to nutrition, and that particular area of the country, it has been routinely, historically, a place where plenty, I guess would be the word. So I can understand where, yeah, there would definitely be very tall people there because they're not going to go through a lot of the starvation that people in the northern regions of Europe and such have gone through.
Right. Well, the English, even today, the soil in Great Britain isn't that nutrient rich. It's all grass, trees, and root vegetables. You don't have that like you would in the Ohio Valley.
Tim says, I had a big Maori friend that was 7 feet, and he would have been close to being able to tear someone apart. Well, those Maori and the Samoans, those guys are just monsters. I knew a Samoan guy in the army, and if there had been somebody I knew that could have, bench press somebody, then ripped an arm off, it probably would have been that guy. We used to call him the dump truck because everybody piled all their extra gear on his pack, and he just kept on walking. Never slowed him down a bit.
I'm picturing our friend Rich.
Yeah, he was bigger than he made Rich look tiny.
Yeah.
Big and rich. Anyway, so I mean, what do you guys think? Am I wrong to think that this is kind of crazy that it's been overlooked?
No,
I think it's insane that
I overlooked it too, but I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds like a classic in the vein of an Ape Canyon or a Siege at Hanabi. It's a classic Bigfoot attack because in Bigfoot attacks, like the story, the wilderness hunter story, the Bauman incident. That it pretty much, that's how it killed the other hunt tracker. It crushed his neck, broke his bones. That's a Bigfoot attack, and that they were torn instead of ripped apart. There is a difference. Like limbs bitten off or pried off with claws. That they were just merely torn apart. To me, that says Bigfoot far more than it does Dogman. And I think this is like one of those little overlooked historical gems because they wanted to say, hey, this was just bears because people were still expanding west back then. And you're far less likely to get somebody to try to settle a homestead in the middle of nowhere if they thought there were 8-foot tall monsters out there ripping folk apart. But somebody was pointing out the other day, and I can't remember who it was. Somebody on the show, we were talking about this. Robbie, you might remember who said this. But it's not like they had a lot of missing persons cases reported in the 1800s. That stuff just didn't get reported. Somebody rode off and nobody ever saw them again. It was like, okay,
no, they must have moved on.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
it wasn't like you call the next state or 3 states over and get the police to go do a well-being check like you can nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean,
no APBs.
I've had people call from California.
APBs was,
hey, you go check on somebody that lives at so and so. I hadn't heard from him in a couple of days. I'm like, how do you know? You're California and I'm in South Carolina. That's the entire country in between us. It's just amazing to think of that stuff, but they didn't have that back then. So, like you said,
it was MK we were talking with, and
but I don't remember who made the comment though.
I think it was MK made the comment, and I said, how many times have you been walking in the woods and found some partially collapsed old homesteader cabin, like the one I found up in Laclede County that still had cook stoves in it?
Yeah, now I'm okay. Yeah, I'm tracking now.
Small stepping in, huh?
Talking about Ape Canyon, we said the exact same thing about Ape Canyon that Nelma just said about this one. We felt like it was one that's kind of been, it's been talked about, but it hadn't really been talked about as much as it probably should have been.
Yeah,
because maybe for what you were just talking about, that was a big time prospecting area, and people made a lot of money selling claims. Stuff like that got out, they're going to lose a lot of money, and because nobody's going to want to come up there and buy a claim in that place if they're getting put under siege by 8-foot monsters that are attacking every night. So,
and the more I've been thinking about this, I mean, the more it just sounds like classic primate behavior. You think about what chimpanzees and a pissed off orangutan and stuff like that could do. It makes a lot more sense, and they would be more inclined to disarticulate something and then just leave it because screw you.
Yeah, it's not it's not really on their diet, their normal diet, and it's not like they were going to carry it off.
Well, and if it was a primate thing, it may also have been a territorial thing.
Mm-hmm.
They may have felt it may not have been a food so much as they were telling them, you're in our territory and this is the payment that you have to make. You need to die because you have gone way too deep into our territory.
I wonder if they'd be willing to let somebody camp out on Beaver Island.
PL and Smith has like a whole month-long October party where he has, I believe he has an area set aside where people can camp. I know that he rents his house for wedding venues because I'm telling you, those gardens are gorgeous. And I believe that he has a bed and breakfast in like a cottage or something. I don't know that you could actually camp on Beaver Island. I don't even know if he actually owns the island. I know just his estate goes down to the Arkansas River. But even if you couldn't get on the island, you could certainly, rent or get as close to it as possible just by visiting his estate. And I know that in October he has this big party. Of course, the big grand finale is on October 31st, which, by the way, is the date that this happened. Was on October 31st, 1919. So, which
Happy
is,
Halloween.
I think that always appealed to me too. So,
it's a great Halloween creepy story, but at the same time, it really happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I could never find was the exact number of people that were killed.
Yeah. I couldn't
I
find
read four survivors, but there was never an exact number of people that were killed. And of course, they were very quick to say it was just bears.
And they were also, I found a couple of places where it said four survivors plus Nuttall, and then there were other places where it was just 4 survivors total. So I don't know even that 4 is the exact number. It may have been 5. There may have been 4 other men, because I found 2 different, and unfortunately for me, the part it's almost too comical for words. The part that you can read for free through the Library of Congress ends like on October 10th. And it's like, no, I need to go 2 more weeks, damn it. Yeah, so that kind of sucked because I couldn't afford to read the whole book because, I'm poor. But I would love to he was so quickly dismissed as being, well, he's got malaria. This was all just hallucinations. The other thing that I would love to be able to find is what the other survivors had to say about it. And I was never able to find anything about if they ever wrote anything, or if they were ever interviewed and somebody wrote about their interview for it. I don't know. Maybe
I couldn't find anything on the survivors either.
Yeah. And that was really disappointing, because
it may have been one of those situations where they said, this is what happened, and if you know what's good for you, shut your mouth.
Yeah.
I just wonder if the Bigfoot are smarter than we all realize. I was just thinking about the 13th Warrior, and how the vendor wanted people to think they were bears. Maybe Bigfoot are going around killing bears and wearing bear skins, and that's why we're getting all these bear misidentifications.
Well, there may be some truth to that, because I'm amazed every day that people are as stupid as they are. Yeah, they're stupider than I think they are.
Well,
go the other way.
I know. I've met you've reached a limit.
I can just hear Antonio
very intelligent
Banderas.
people in my life, and I've also met some people that I'm amazed they can breathe and chew bubble gum.
I'm just hearing Antonio Banderas. Bears. They want us to think they are bears.
Love it.
Yeah, DA, I'm going to tell you the truth. I have days when I am amazed at my own genius. And then I have other days where I think, I actually walked to the bathroom all by myself.
Why tie my shoes?
Look at me.
Yep. Yeah, those days for me are usually, and I survived into my 40s. How?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Darwin was asleep at the wheel somewhere.
The Darwin Awards. Oh, I love the Darwin Awards.
Some of those are pretty hilarious.
There was, I don't want to tell that because it's too recent and it might strike a chord with somebody, but somebody died in a very unfortunate way recently, and I won't go into detail about it, but it was one of those things where, what in the hell? And the very first comment on the news story said, Darwin, take the wheel. It's like,
oh no.
Yeah, I had to laugh at that. My husband,
that's wrong.
Yeah, my husband came in to read it to me because I live for the Darwin Awards. Those are my annual chuckle.
There's a YouTube guy that I like to watch, and he's a very kind of a stilted uh, English gentleman, and very very proper. And he did a video on criminals earning the Darwin Award, like people that died in spectacular fashion trying to commit some kind of a crime, and listening to his like English mid-country accent say these things. I was laughing so hard I was in tears, and the content wasn't that funny, but the way that he was delivering it, I laughed so hard.
Yeah, I get a big kick out of.
You said Moss Mountains isn't too far from Little Rock.
Not that far, no.
Is it closer to Texarkana or Hot Springs?
I think it. Well, you know where Conway is, just a little north. I think it's right outside of Conway. I'd have to look it up. But so it's heading west, but not quite sure how far.
Annette and I last year, I think it was in June because it was for my birthday. Last year we went down and stayed in some cabins just outside Hot Springs, and it was an interesting place. It would have been, to me, it would have been a cool place to try to like record something, but there were too many people around. It was out in the woods, but there was a lot of other cabins around, and I would really like to have had a place like that didn't have a bunch of people around, because the cabin itself was really nice.
Yeah. I've come to find out that if a cryptid wants to have an encounter with you, and I really do think it's that way, not the other way around, they're not going to say, well, they're not alone, I'll let them be with their friends. They're just going to come on in.
Yeah, pretty much.
I have to adjust. I'm sorry. The bones are getting old.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I've got to have my lumbar pillow in my chair.
I've got 3 pillows behind me in my chair, and I've got my blankie because I'm cold and it's winter time.
It's not so cold here. It's not too cool here.
Well, it's 43 here.
I do have a bit of positive information. It's completely unrelated to cryptids. Had my second round of shots day before yesterday, and those went well. And they're supposed to call me back this coming week to set up the final ablation. And I cannot wait to get that done. I really can't.
Oh, I'm happy for you.
Yay.
See, I had the opposite problem. I got my MRI results finally, thinking, oh, they're finally going to be able to do something about my knee. And I was told that it's just degenerative stuff from age and wear and tear. And the medical advice was to try to stay off of it and lose some weight. And I'm like, well, that was
always the advice.
Well spent.
Yes, stay off your leg and lose some weight. Don't exercise because that'll put you on your knees. That'll make you have to use your legs, but lose some weight.
There's the fact that I'm a nurse, so therefore I work 12-hour shifts. Kind of hard to stay
on your feet like 11 hours and 45 minutes of that.
Yeah,
including for your lunch.
I'm like, well, I've chosen to be fat the last 25 years, and
It took me a long time to find these pounds. You want me to lose them?
Oh, there you
I
go.
guard these babies with a fork and a knife.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that it took 2 doctors and a $3,100 MRI to come up with that brain-startling conclusion here.
Yeah. Well, by the time I eventually get my left knee fixed, the right knee's going to need it. So I've come to the conclusion that it'll just be, in the hospital for one, finally learn to use it, and back in for the other.
That's
my oldest brother actually had both of them done at the same time, which I understand they don't do anymore. But
no, they won't do it anymore.
He had both of them done at the same time. I have to give him credit. There's no way I would have.
The doctor probably used the logic, we'll do them both at once, because if we do one at a time, he's not going to get the second one.
That's exactly what my brother said. He said if he had only one done, he'd have never had the other one done because it was such painful. There is nothing wrong with being a large mammal. It puts me at the top of the food chain.
Love that quote.
Definitely. It also puts me last when the other mammals are running away. Don't worry. Go out in the woods with me. They'll feast on me for hours before they ever get tired. Believe me, I know. I'll be the one who gets caught in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, there you go.
There you
South
go.
Africa
Yeah.
says I had a doctor that was twice my weight and smoked. Told me I had to lose weight and exercise. Yeah, right. C. Campbell says Moss Mountain is northwest of Little Rock, about 20 miles. So as the crow flies, it wasn't too far for where those cabins are at, because Hot Springs is just down the road from Little Rock.
Yeah. So there you go. And like I said, it's an estate Moss Mountain Estate is open to the public, and it goes right down to the river. You can look right out. You look out of his back windows and look right down on the river.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's his front windows, because the estate actually faces the river, I think. I just can't express to you how beautiful that is. Really a beautiful. It's a big white sort of a Georgian mansion, and got a red roof, and just acres of beautiful gardens.
I wonder if they've ever had a sighting there.
I don't know.
It'd be an interesting fellow to talk to.
Definitely.
Well, there are sightings of Bigfoot type creatures from basically that whole watershed basin from the Little Rock area all the way to East Texas. I mean, Boggy Creek runs right into that same watershed.
Yeah. Well, and 100 miles for us might sound like a lot, but if you're 8 feet tall and take 5-foot strides, that may not be such a big deal.
Well, mountain lions have a shorter stride than we do, but they've got a range of 250, almost 300 miles. Isn't that right, Robbie?
Yep, about 250, 260, somewhere in there.
There you go.
And that's a mountain lion. So something the size of a Bigfoot's probably got a much bigger range.
There you go.
I think we estimated probably 1,500 to 2,000.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, theoretically, something bipedal would have a decent range. I mean, they've done some of the research, with the like the primate development, from more the four-legged stuff to like the Neanderthals to stuff up to us. That walking upright gave the benefit of covering more territory. Not to mention seeing what was coming better.
True.
Well, it nothing else. Just like we talked about, something that big that has to eat that much and eat that many, it couldn't stay in one small area because it would totally ravage that entire area. So that's why I would speculate that it would have a huge winding territory, just so it didn't completely run one area completely dry.
Right.
I see. I have a hard time with the "it's big so it must eat a lot more" concept, because the expression "eat like a horse, eat like a bird" should be reversed. Birds eat way more percentage wise than horses.
Well, their metabolism is so much faster.
Right. And so, I mean, how much does a gorilla consume in a year?
Yeah, I don't know that there's ever really been a study done on. Well, I guess primatologists would know, because they would have to know what to feed them in zoos. But that's not information I've ever looked up. Maybe I should dig into that.
Because I'm wondering if it's a situation where we assume the size, so it must be something that has to eat constantly, but it's if the metabolism doesn't require it.
I would think something that big, the metabolism would require it, because they're more, or they're closer to us, and you wouldn't be able to survive living outdoors like that with everything that they have to go through. They would have to have like
look at bears.
Shaw,
Bears have got to take in a tremendous amount of calories.
Yeah.
And generally most of it's protein.
Brian Shaw eats 4,000 to 5,000 calories, or what was it? No, 20,000 calories a day. As a power lifter, and he's 6'8", right around 400 pounds. So
Right. Didn't they do some study with the military about like how many calories like an infantryman on patrol would have to consume? Is like what 2 to 5,000 calories a day or whatever it was. It was a very significant
And that
amount.
number goes up in cold weather.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's just to keep your body heat regulated. You would have to eat that much if you're living in an environment like that. You would have to, because if I get what you're saying, Elman. I think that's, because like the metabolism of a bird is probably way higher, just because it has to be for the energy output it needs to fly and do the things it needs to do. But I believe that something that size it has to fuel that machine. It doesn't lay around like, a snake that takes in a big meal that can lay around in a burrow for, or an alligator or a crocodile. It's constantly moving, and it has to have that fuel to fuel that machine. That's my opinion on it. I mean, obviously all of it's speculation, but that would be my opinion. That it would constantly have to at least put a small amount constantly in that to keep going.
K-Talk had a great comment. Says you have to wonder that since you're describing this as an island in the river, wouldn't that be a great birthing area or young area for the Sasquatch? They may have come in on a real special area. Yeah, they might have been in a territory those things really didn't want them in.
Let's camp out in a Bigfoot nursery because that's a safe place to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
They didn't list that on the tour guide.
Well, and to Naomi's point about the food, depending on what these things eat too, the more carnivorous, omnivorous they are, the more nutrient rich their food's going to be, and the less, the higher calorie density the food's going to have, the less they're going to physically eat. You get a lot more calories out of a piece of steak, than a comparable amount of, corn, or whatever, something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everything concentrates. So, I mean, for argument's sake, let's say these are some really big primate-ish creatures, Bigfoot or whatever you want to call them. If they're eating people and eating bears and eating, other furry, warm-blooded things,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're getting some pretty nutrient-rich food.
Well, if you look at some of the deer kills that are like dead deer that are found, or even some of the animal attacks like livestock, big livestock like horses and cows, they're not taking large chunks of meat. They're taking the nutrient-rich organs, the liver, the heart, some of these organs that contain tremendous amount of calories, and those are the ones that are routinely missing from some of these animals.
Well, just get for a balance of that, or a counter to that. Just look at all those great white sharks that we've talked about that were killed in Hines Bay, South Africa, by those two killer whales. The only thing missing was the liver, and it was almost surgically removed. I mean, because that's all, and all these dead sharks washing up on shore, and the only thing they were missing were their livers, because that gave those two killer whales the most calories, the most bang for the buck. But I mean, animals know what they need, and they're going to get what they need.
Chairman Meow says, do we know if Bigfoot really eat humans, though? Isn't it the consensus that bears don't usually try to eat humans because there's not enough? Not necessarily true. There are lots of bears that are confirmed man-eaters. Polar bears are confirmed man-eaters. If they can get a human, it's an easier meal than chasing a seal. Grizzly bears, especially during, like, right before hibernation or when they've just come out, will gladly take a human. It's an easy meal. But usually when we start talking about animals that will come after humans, it's like we talked about on one of the previous shows, it's that cost-benefit analysis, because most humans, especially out in the woods, are armed. Is that meal worth the risk I've got to take to get it? But, like my joke about about a grizzly bear looking one way down the trail and seeing a deer running at 40 miles an hour the other direction, and then looking to his right and seeing some guy listening to an iPod and smoking a cigarette and wearing Birkenstocks marching through the woods. I wonder what that thing tastes like. He don't look like he's that fast.
Wow, that is a lot of calories in a cow. And I bet I consume at least half of them every. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, but it
carnivore.
always surprises me when there's a suspected cryptid attack on livestock, specifically cattle, that there are only certain organs that they take. They're the high calorie quick grabs.
Right.
Dogman doesn't take time to carve out the back strap. They go for these nutrient rich, like specifically the liver in particular. But they'll take a lot of the internal organs, the liver and the kidneys, the heart. All of those carry tremendous amounts of nutrients as well as calories. And
Well, with the
and
exception
that's
of the heart, they're all relatively unprotected too. You can
true.
get to the liver without going through a whole bunch of bone. You can get to the kidneys without going through a whole bunch of bone.
Well,
The
once you
heart,
get to the kidneys, you just got to go north. Yeah,
there you
you
go.
don't have to go through the rib cage; just go under it.
Yeah.
Hey, Sentinel's in the house, and he just gave us a super chat. Hey, thank you, Sentinel. Appreciate you, brother.
Hey, buddy.
Sentinel.
Mr. Miller.
Jane Doe says perhaps those livestock which are entirely carried off are consumed in whole. I would say yeah, but to me, if you're missing one, like in some of the cases where livestock are just simply gone, I think you're probably dealing with a group. But if you've got a single hunter or rogue hunter, who's not part of a group, they're going to go for the highest reward, least amount of effort. Get a lot of effort in dismembering a cow and carrying off a side of beef. But if you can take the liver and the kidneys and the heart and anything else that's rich in those nutrients, those are much easier to be taken out, much easier to carry because they don't weigh as much, and you can get them relatively quickly and be gone.
Do they like? And plus, I mean, well, it wouldn't matter if the other would too. Never mind. I definitely agree with you. I think that it's clear that's what they're going for, is the quick grab, the high
I think so too.
calories. It's amazing to me that they know that instinctively, and we have to be taught that.
Well, they may have just learned it through acclimated behavior too, though. I mean, you eat enough things, you kind of figure out where the tasty parts are. It's like
Yeah.
if you've never been exposed to, you know, a rotisserie chicken, after eating it a couple of times, you figure out where your favorite parts are.
Doesn't take long.
Yeah.
True. The legs.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Just
everybody's got
saying.
their favorite parts,
Legs and wings. I'm a limbs kind of person.
Okay. So was the Moss Mountain Bigfoot.
Yeah, we could bond in the wild, I think.
I like that sound. Snap.
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so Arkansas really does have a lot of really interesting cryptids. They've got the I think it's
the humans are the McDonald's of the cryptid world. Yeah, easy to get, probably not very good for you.
probably not.
Just here and there, 66 says back in the 70s, a neighbor to my grandparents had two 500-pound pigs disappear out of their pen. It happens. There are reports all over the country of people that have livestock just gone, and like the pen is still intact. The nothing's been knocked down. They were just like scooped up and taken.
Right. Yeah, that takes
I
some
just
effort.
flashed back. I just flashed back to Legend of Boggy Creek. That thing picked up my two prize shoat and lifted them over that fence.
I don't know what animal can pick up two hogs, one under each arm, and walk off with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Ain't
That
wrong.
was. Oh gosh, I can't remember.
That was like 15, 20 minutes into the movie when they were talking about
Yeah.
that, because he's talking about he just drug the hogs off and left them, and he thought it was funny because he didn't see no buzzards or anything, so he went after check, and they were, whatever it was, done come back and picked them up and took them off.
Yeah.
There wasn't even no drag marks in the grass.
Now what could pick up two hogs and
200-pound hogs and carry them off under each arm.
Yeah. I love that movie. I really do.
Northwoods. Oh, I love it.
That is hilarious.
Oh,
I would like to think that if any animal ate me, at the very least, I could give it gaffs.
I'd probably give him, at least a, bad case of heartburn.
well, like Ryan's comment earlier, if one was going to eat him, he was going to make every effort to give it to Stone Cold Stunner before it choked him down. I like that.
Heck yeah.
Of course, I like Spoon's comment in Dog Soldiers.
That was a good one too.
Oh, but I'll give you the runs. Only he didn't say runs. We're going to be family friendly, then, right, DA?
Exactly.
Yeah, Robert, I'd give him a hairball. Not from here, but from here.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, and I don't mean to keep harping back on it. It just really fascinates me that not just that it happened, and I do understand that it did happen 200, years ago. But I just don't understand why more people haven't talked about this, about the Moss Mountain Massacre, because it just seems odd that it just got brushed under the rug,
I agree, and it's like they deliberately tried to sweep it under the rug and discredit this guy, and then just didn't talk about it. Now, granted, it was a long time ago. It was 100+ years ago, but no, 200 years ago.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
200,
my math is bad.
203 years ago.
Yeah, so it's over 200 years ago, but at the same time, this guy was an accredited and respected researcher.
Yeah. And I understand the situation, being right out of the War of 1812, going through French territory, and dealing with. He was actually quite the complainer when it came to dealing with the French. He hated. He said every time they stopped at a trading post or whatever was run by Frenchmen, that they were trying to rob him, that they were stupid people, that they. I mean, he was really had pushed every button with all of his men by the time they got to the Arkansas River. But you can't question his knowledge, because this is a man who took out on a trek by himself through Kentucky, Tennessee, the Carolinas, and I think part of Virginia,
Part of the Appalachian Trail.
and just all alone, just to collect fauna and flora samples. I have to.
Yeah.
I kind of think it's funny when he was in the Great Lakes with Lewis and Clark. He had collected a whole bunch of samples and had sent them back with them, and they lost them.
Of course.
So
Corey Cole says in 2011, a group of college students and guides were on an ice raft after their boat sank and encountered a starving polar bear who stalked and ate them alive one by one. Ooh, that's a horror story. I'd like to look into that. And Papa Bear had something for you there, Miss Naomi.
Oh, hi, Tegan. That's my youngest granddaughter. Hi, sweetie. She's about 15, 16 months old now.
Chairman Meow says he also must have
17
realized
months.
that people would look at him like he's crazy with his story.
Yeah.
Well, that seems to be behind a lot of these things. It's and sometimes the powers that be even make you seem crazier, to discredit you.
Yeah. It. I don't know if you're familiar with. I forgot the writer. 2 Years Beyond the Mast. Is that right? Is that the name of it? Gosh, I hate names. Even book names confuse me. But anyway, he had written a 2-year memoir of his trip from Boston to California on a ship, all the way down and around and back up. And there's a part in the book where he talks about he arrives in California and he sees this scruffy looking man on the beach and barefooted and, you know, kind of scraggly hair and not well dressed, clearly digging in the sand for what I assume were clams or something. And he was shocked to realize that this man was his former college professor at, I think he taught at Yale or Penn State. And the college professor he was referring to was Thomas Nuttall. I mean, the man, he was well respected. We're not talking some fruitcake, although they did try to discredit him over this. He had earned his stripes, and he was he had the experience, he had the knowledge, he had everything necessary to make you stop and say something happened here, and I don't think it was hallucinations from malaria, and I really don't think it was bears,
I don't either.
and it certainly wasn't Native Americans. So you tell me what's out there that's big enough to do that if you eliminate bears.
Yeah, it doesn't leave a whole lot of. And you know, despite the fact that the Osage were, you know, reported to be, you know, around the 7 foot range, I just don't see a human being able to tear somebody limb from limb. Not only that, that's pretty far south of the Osage's range.
Right.
Well, and even at that, the amount of metabolic energy that it would take for a human to do that would wear you out in a hurry. You know,
Yep.
look at how short a period of time, you know, a world-class boxer can last without taking a break.
Yeah.
You know, 2-3 minutes. You know, you're not going to tear through a camp, you know, dismembering everybody in sight and just keep on going. I'm sorry.
And we
Well, I
have
mean,
to assume that it wasn't just a small group of men because they had longboats. And I say that plurally. They had they were transporting their horses because they were getting off the boats and so they had people handling the horses. They had probably a camp cook. They had various guides and scouts, and so I don't think that we're talking maybe, you know, half a dozen men and 2 of them were killed.
No, it was a full expedition.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Well, even Lewis
thank
and
you. 2
Clark
Years
had
Before the Mass by
Justin's
Richard.
men with them.
Thank you, Seth. Papa Bear helped me out. He named the book I was trying to remember. Richard Dana Jr. And
Robert D says Osage tribe was out of Missouri or a bigger part of the USA. The Osage were actually considered a Siouan tribe. The part of their language origin was related to the Sioux, and their primary range was like most of northeast Oklahoma, a very small part of northern Arkansas, and Missouri almost to St. Louis. And now the Osage tribe is mostly I think from what I read, there's like 19,000 people today that are listed as being part of the Osage Nation, and they predominantly live in northeastern Arkansas. I would like to go down there to do some more research, and to go to their actual cultural center and do some more research on it. But they've had a much bigger range than before. Well, obviously, you know, before settlers kept coming into the area, but it was primarily southwest Missouri, very small part of northern Arkansas, and part of northeastern Oklahoma.
in answer to your question, Chairman, they actually continued forward with just 5 people. They didn't go back. They continued to the on westward. I believe they went. They went to a point where they were. Gosh, I can't remember. It's so sad. I don't know what's happened to my memory lately. If I'm just so stressed out or what. But they did continue onward with just 5 people. They did not turn around and go back after the massacre. They may have recruited others at some point. I don't know where they would have recruited them from, but they certainly continued onward. And I think that that also speaks volumes about his tenacity, that he did not, tuck his tail and run after that. I certainly would have. I'm not going to lie. I'd have been like, somebody needs to land with a chopper right now, and if you need to invent it to do that, then you go right on ahead, but someone's going to airlift me out of here.
Exactly.
I am not walking. So, the entire the other thing I wanted to say is that, like I said, they were in and out of different territories where they had good relations with the various tribes, and they had been in, although I don't know that they knew that they were still in that territory, in a territory with very good, where they had very good relations with. They were helping them and helping them finding food and things like that. So that again just eliminates the concept that Native Americans did this. Even if they could have tied these people to horses, that's not what he saw. He saw giant two-legged beings walk around a camp, picking human beings up, slamming them to the ground, and tearing them apart and throwing them around. So just crazy.
Yeah, it's terrifying to even think of.
Yeah.
Well, that whole situation. I mean, even if say there was only a dozen men, that's still 75% essentially massacred.
Yeah. The other thing that I would really like to know, and it's made me very curious to find out, is just I know that not Lewis and Clark, maybe it was Lewis and Clark, or maybe it was um Father Marquette and Joliet.
Mm.
Um, they did have an incident in their expeditions where they actually did encounter something that they couldn't explain.
Supposedly
And
Lewis and Clark did as well, but that part of their
was
journal
it
is not
Lewis and
available.
Clark?
Lewis and
Yeah, I
Clark
couldn't.
did.
I just want to know. I mean, it's really made me hungry to dive into these things and find out. This one was right under our noses in plain sight. How many are out there buried in the? It's made me question a lot of things that I took for granted in history books.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories is when, oh, I don't remember. I'm sure you'll tell me in a minute. Was it Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett that killed the?
The Howler.
Was it a howler or a wampus cat? I guess it was a howler.
Ozark's Howler. That was
Yeah.
Daniel Boone. In fact, just outside of the town that I used to be a patrol officer in, Walnut Grove, Missouri, just outside is Daniel Boone's son's homestead.
Oh wow.
You can tour it.
It's funny. You were talking about part of Lewis and Clark's journal being redacted or excluded or whatever. It's kind of funny that at that point in time the country was less than 50 years old and the government was already classifying documents.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Oh,
DA, did you get a chance to look at that map me Google
I have
map?
not yet. I forgot about it.
Yeah. I was really amazed at the number of sightings that are in Arkansas. That a lot of them, uh, I spent a great deal of my life just reading it about sightings and listening to shows where people talk about sightings, and shows like Cameron Buckner's and shows like Wes Germer's and things like that, and jumping on websites. And I was really surprised at the stories that are on that particular um, uh, site that I hadn't heard anywhere else. But there was one on there that I found really interesting, and I don't remember where I originally heard it. It may have been on Wes Germer's show. A woman and her husband and her brother had gone camping there in Arkansas, and I believe It might have been up around Beaver Dam, as opposed to Beaver Island, which is way far away. But they had gone camping back in the early 70s, and in the middle of the night, something attacked their VW van that they were camping in. Her brother was actually in a tent next to the van, and he jumped out of the tent and into the van with them, and they were in the van with their 2 small children. And it started with a howl, and it totally freaked them out. And so they're sitting there, and her husband and brother got the crazy idea to get up in front and turn on the headlights. And when they did, they saw something move in the distance. And of course, silly them, they got out to look, and they were just rained on by rocks they were kind of parked on at the edge of at the bottom of a cliff type thing. And they jumped back into the van, and they were, at this point, just decided they're going to drive out, and something chased them all the way out. So I found that one really interesting. There's a lot of crazy stuff in that state.
Well, when you talk about the little overlooked nuggets in history, there's a quote from quote from Buffalo Bill Cody, and it's one of those quotes I've always scratched my head about because there's never anything done to kind of try to explain what he was talking about. But this quote persists. It says, "The Indians said the bones were those of a race of people 3 times the size of a man."
There you go.
So at some point in his career, Buffalo Bill Cody saw bones that the natives were like, "This is what these are," and he's like, "I got no idea what these things are."
Right.
Do they wear fur coats?
Are they really hairy? Or are they swarthy at all?
Yeah. Did they maybe smell like they needed to take a bath?
It's little things like that, little historical notes that just keep popping up.
And I just keep digging more because of them,
Right.
Well, I mean, how many times we've mentioned Teddy Roosevelt's thing? I mean, that's just something that...
Right.
Yeah, and I had never thought about it until you brought it up, about the fact that probably was his own story. And he told it as in a third-person narrative to keep from being made fun of.
Well, you named the character Bauman, but no first name is ever given, and the level of detail in the story is far beyond some campfire tale you're going to get out of a mountain man. Some of my uncles on my mother's side of the family were about as close to mountain men as you can get. These were big backwoodsmen, guys that lived their whole lives out in the woods. And I remember going fishing and camping and hunting with Uncle Cecil and Uncle Owen, Uncle Buck. And I remember them telling stories, and you didn't get that level of detail out of them. They'd say, "Well, there's one time I was over in this holler over here. I was hunting, and I saw a wildcat," and that kind of story. And they might tell you the story, they'll tell you the details about what it looked like, but they don't describe the way they set their camp up. They don't describe how they let their traps out. It's just way too much detail in the Bauman incident that you would get out of somebody that's just relaying a story over a campfire.
Yeah.
My family reunions, they need subtitles, even know what's going on. I was
the
thinking about... Oh, go ahead, Robbie.
I was going to say the 2 conclusions you can draw out of that were, one, like DA said, it was him, and he was telling his story. Or 2, he's a creative writer like DA, and he just embellished on the guy saying, "Well, yeah, this happened over here," and so and so. So,
yeah,
one of those 2.
Well, if you look at the rest of the stories in Teddy's journal, The Wilderness Hunter, if you look at the rest of the stories, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, and I'm not trying to knock any other writer out there. This is not about that. It's just Teddy just didn't really hit me as that prolific a writer, if you know what I mean. His stories are pretty much just straightforward stories. He doesn't burden the reader with a lot of detail. but it's an interesting read. It is, but the level of detail that went into that strikes me more as a recollection than a story he created.
Yeah. Well, you made a mention to this in a previous show, maybe a couple weeks ago, where, at the time that he wrote this, Roosevelt already had political aspirations. He was wanting to be
Yeah,
somebody respected, somebody regarded, and there would be no incentive. It was about himself for him to basically start off a story like this with "Y'all ain't gonna believe this shit." It
yeah.
politically, it was more important to him to have that anonymity if it was him. He
No,
wasn't. He
and he's
wasn't.
got the ability to. If somebody says, "Oh, that's crazy, that couldn't happen," he goes, "Well, it's just a campfire story." But if he said it was him, he can't say that. He can't back away and
Well,
go,
right,
"Oh,
and
you okay? I was just spinning a yarn."
he wasn't James Cameron trying to sell a screenplay here.
Right.
You know, there would have been the incentive if the message had to get out there to make sure that his name wasn't sullied in the effort.
Mondoc had a good uh, question. He says, "Anybody remember the guy who got bent backwards and stuffed into the cab of his truck? He was sighting in a 300 Win Mag. It was on a Wes Germer show. I heard that story on Bigfoot Outlaws. Apparently, this guy was at a rock quarry sighting in his rifle, and this Bigfoot creature came out, and apparently he took a shot at it. And when they found the guy's body, he was folded backwards and stuffed in the cab of his truck."
Yeah, he was supposed to meet his wife and I think brother-in-law after he sighted in his rifle, and he didn't show up, so they went looking for him.
Yeah.
Robert D says Teddy has said him and another hunter heard howls on one night and that they were hunting and neither knew what it was.
Yeah, that the guy with the 300 Win Mag clearly came in contact with a jiu-jitsu practitioner, right? Holding him up,
The art of folding clothes with people still in them.
Yep.
Yeah.
That line sounds familiar.
Yeah.
It popped in my head from somewhere.
I know a certain
where I got
smart-ass
it.
writer who used that once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am. My favorite Teddy quote is on the day of Franklin and Eleanor's wedding. Well, at least they're keeping the name in the family. Franklin and Eleanor were cousins, and I believe she was his niece, and he gave her away because her father had passed away. And that's what he said to both of them. Well, at least you're keeping the name in the family.
Well, there was one. We were talking about famous quotes. There was one by Mark Twain, Sam Clemens, and I can't remember who it was. It was somebody he couldn't stand. And when they passed away, they asked him, "Did you attend the funeral?" He said, "I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent a nice letter saying how much I approved of it."
Yeah, that's a good one. The quote that I tend to repeat most often is, "If it's on the internet, it must be true." Abraham Lincoln said that in 1863.
Yeah.
You see that, Steve?
Me too. Me too. There's a reason I look the way that I do.
Well, help me out, guys. Ask me questions. Tell me something.
So, I guess the obvious thing that most people, other than the bears, that the obvious go-to of, it was the malaria thing because that was what caused it to. So, Steve, I guess this is more of a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Malaria, is that something that can cause hallucinations, or back then?
Anything that could cause you to run a high fever can make you somewhat delusional. My grandfather in World War II, he was stationed in the Philippines and Guam. He like typical DA could probably testify to this, being ex-Army. The Army trained him to go to Africa to fight Rommel, and then he did all his training there in the desert, and then they shipped him out to the Philippines and Guam. And so he trained for the desert, was sent to the rainforest. And so he, within a week, he had malaria and jungle rot. He was running a really high fever, like a delusional delirium high fever for weeks. But he wasn't seeing Dogman. He wasn't seeing Bigfoot. I mean, he was, sick as F. And I don't know. I've never heard a story of somebody coming back from something like that with a fantastical story of this kind of thing. I mean, you look at the people, well, even most recently, those who have become a fairly serious victim of, the plague of the 21st century. They don't wake up saying that, they were raped by aliens. They don't come up saying that,
Yeah.
they're just sick as hell. I just don't. I don't know. I don't. Yes, there are fever dreams, but I don't really see a fever dream being that vivid. And from what Naomi says, nobody has come forward to completely. What's the word? Whatever the reverse of corroborate is, to completely contradict it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a documented expedition with X number of men. If only 5 of them survived, and they picked up some interlopers to fill the rest of it, there hasn't been anybody that's come forward to this point and said, "Oh, he's full of shit. This didn't happen."
Yeah. Nobody's discredited it.
Right.
Discredited it.
Yeah.
There's way too many dits in there, I'm pretty sure.
No, I just don't. I just don't see it. Malaria is a horrible disease, and like Naomi said earlier, yeah, you have it for life. My grandfather had it for life. He couldn't donate blood the rest of his life, and et cetera, et cetera. And and of course, this was in the 1940s where we had quinine. We had drugs that would stop it, or treat it anyway. I just don't see it.
That's good enough for me.
Yeah. So
I wholly concur.
I should Doc back me up because he's a lot more cerebral than I am about it.
That's the only other logical jump that people are going to make from the it was bears, or they were suffering from malaria, so it was a hallucination. And hallucination.
And the fun thing about that is the fact that it's experts who are using that as an argument. Experts who should know are using that as an argument that no, it was bears and he had malaria and he was imagining things.
Yeah,
and there's nowhere does anybody say no, those people didn't die. They full on agree that those men died.
Right.
Nobody's
and they don't dispute how they died.
Yeah, no, they don't.
But they tried to say it was bears. Yeah, bears don't do that.
The fact that they died and their method of death has never been one time discredited or disavowed. However, they've come up with some pretty crazy ideas as to exactly who did it or what did it. And I think that their crazy ideas should be counteracted by my crazy idea. And I really do believe that this was a Bigfoot attack. I can.
The more I read about it, the more it just makes sense to me.
There was, when I was researching, I did find an interesting Dogman attack that actually happened about 70 miles from there. Was not a Dogman attack. I apologize. A man was coming home from work, second shift. He saw something cross the road in front of him. He stopped his car at an angle to flash the lights out into the road to be able to see what it was, and it scared him. The car behind him had done the same, and he drove off. He just took off. But they kind of sat there and watched it. And he had no idea who the people were behind him, never spoke to him again. But what got him was he got home, and he had a pit bull, or a pit bull mix, I'm not sure which. And the dog kept acting really strange in the entire night. After he got home and he made his meal and settled in, the entire rest of the night, something was outside banging on his house, which I can attest to. And clearly, and his dog was totally freaked out by it. And that was only 70 miles from where this happened. So, from Moss Mountain. So there's a lot of strange things. There's a lot of things that people really need to look into to find an answer other than bear, because bear just does not ring true.
Yeah, exactly. Bear, and not only that, the experts should know better. Bears don't do that. like we were saying, there's not a big pack of bears out there running around. Bears are not pack animals.
No, they only congregate like during salmon season, and that's just because the banks of the river only can,
Hold so many.
And
Yep.
and they
Right.
they only congregate in small groups during mating season. And when they're done, the female runs the male off.
Yeah,
I'm
Good
done
for
with you.
her.
Kick rocks.
good for her. I'm only kidding.
But mainly
But
because it'll eat the young.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
true.
I keep thinking of, it seems like when you get into a situation where you're dealing with a possible cryptid encounter, they seem to be really quick to explain Bigfoot away as bears and Dogman away as a pack of wild dogs. But they also try to explain away a lot of UFO sightings as, swamp gas and weather balloons too. When
Speaking of weather balloons.
Tiny
Venus.
weather balloons.
yeah, but it seems a little too
Guys,
convenient sometimes.
just saying. You can make a balloon go away with air. Just saying.
I think a Hellfire missile works better.
Yeah, but then you're being aggressive. Just push some air at it. Okay, I'm sorry. We won't go any farther into that.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't trying to open that up, but it just, I don't know. It just seems too quick to try to explain it away. And
Well,
just
I mean-
same thing with these livestock mutilations we've talked about in previous shows. Yes, okay, it was an animal attack, a wild animal that basically had a laser scalpel.
Yeah.
Because that's what wolves
David
do.
Bye's got a good comment. He says, "And black bear don't get that big, especially in the Ozarks." You're right. Back a really big black bear in this area might be 5.5 feet on its hind legs,
Yeah.
and it does. And when it's on its hind legs, it does not look like a person. And Nuttall swore it looked like a human or humanoid on its standing up and walking among people.
Yeah, and he was very specific about the fact that it walked through. It was on two legs walking through the camp.
Cool.
And as we know, a bear will stand up, to look big and aggressive and come down on its attack, but
It ain't gonna fight on its hind legs.
it's not gonna move to its next
Well, just
victim.
think of a key line in that the thing you sent out to us, DA. It said grown men being thrown around like toys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, a bear can bat you around, but it's not going to throw you.
It's not
you
going to
might-
pick you up and throw
They
you.
said some of the men had been picked up and slammed
And-
down on the ground hard enough to hear bones smash.
Yeah,
Bears
don't
don't
lift.
do that.
No.
Well,
By
one
the
thing,
way,
don't have
I
thumbs.
just
How
have
are they
to
gonna pick
ask,
you up?
who's going to watch Cocaine Bear when it comes out on the 28th?
Oh, I'm sure I will.
I can't wait. I'm excited about it. I'm sorry. Okay, back to the conversation. Yeah, I just I think that when I started researching this, and I immediately saw it was instantly dismissed as a bear attack. Instantly, it was the reasons for why he thought it was anything else was because he was in the throes of malaria. And by the way, I don't think that he was in the throes of malaria. I think that I don't know enough about malaria. I know it comes and goes after, but I think in July was when they were all hit with it, and yeah, they were still feeling the after effects, but it's not like he was in the height of it. And there's nothing that indicates that he was running a fever that night.
No, by
Some of
late
the men
October,
were.
he'd be out of the acute phase. You're not in the
Right.
acute phase for 3 damn months. I'm sorry.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And I don't know enough about it. And I'm glad that you're a nurse so that you can clarify this with me, because I really did feel like that just was a really weak excuse. And the fact that the excuses were so weak, it just angered me. It's like, how could people just say, oh, well, yeah, okay, that's it.
Because generally, most people want to believe that the easiest thing to believe, the thing
Yeah.
that to them makes the most sense and doesn't take them out of their comfortable, and we've said this many times on here before. Once that switch is turned on, and you know things like this exist, you've seen them, you can't turn that switch back off.
Right.
No,
And
you can't
people don't
unsee
want
it.
people don't want to be taken out of their perfect little world where they have to deal with, okay, if that's real, what else is real? And most people, that's why most people flock to these answers that they're given. Like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what it was. Because they don't
Yeah,
want to
whatever
believe
helps
that
you
because
sleep at night.
yeah, exactly. It pops that perfect bubble that they have that, like we talked about piercing the veil. We've talked about that several times. Once that's done, there's no turn back.
Yep.
And
Ignorance is bliss.
people, yeah, exactly. Just it's the Matrix theory. I know this steak is fake and it's in my head, but ignorance is bliss. Well,
Right.
people want to have that nice little existence where they don't have to deal with that and the thought of these things being really real. So they're just like, oh, okay, I'll accept whatever little stupid excuse is given to me. And other than facing facts of, okay, this doesn't fit any type of behavior it's ever been recorded from a bear at all. And
Yeah.
there's no humans that are big enough to do that. Yeah, people would just
And
rather,
the malaria thing doesn't wash.
yeah,
Mhm.
people
So
would rather accept that than they had look at the facts and look at the evidence and where the evidence actually points you to.
I think logic is a very terrifying concept for most people. They don't want to apply it to anything. And yet, if they did, they would answer a lot of questions, or at least they would be able to disqualify a lot of answers.
Right.
Right.
And logic in that situation definitely disqualifies what the and over and over and over again, every website, every book, every newspaper article, everything is always the experts say. And it's like, I want to see their degrees. What are they experts in? I want to know. I need their credentials now, because I'm
Right.
not hearing an expert speak about bears, because somebody who's an expert on bears would not have said the things that they said. I want to
Right.
see a doctor who knows about malaria, because clearly a doctor who knows about malaria would not have said what he said or what they said.
Right.
So these so-called experts may have been an expert, but they probably were an expert in scrambling eggs. Certainly not an expert in wildlife or medicine.
Right.
So it just really was frustrating. And it really gave me a hunger to start really digging in and try to find other old stories that have been dismissed like this, because I'm certain that somebody who is as actually highly regarded ultimately at excuse me, as he was, could so easily be dismissed. There's got to be thousands others out there.
Oh yeah.
You like you alluded to with the experts. Okay, so that you've got somebody with a PhD. Okay, well, that's a PhD in underwater basket weaving, then it really doesn't apply.
Exactly.
Now, if
A
you've got
PhD
somebody
just
like,
gets her piled higher and deeper anyway.
well, exactly, and you've got somebody, let's say this is examined by, whatever the Victorian equivalent of Jeff Meldrum was, and he said, oh, yeah, it was definitely a bear. Okay, I might take that to the bank. The Ken Gerhardts of the crowd, I might take that to the bank. But, you need to know the credentials of the person you're talking about.
I think he was that guy at the British Museum that offered his opinion. That's where that came from.
Oh, no, they were suffering from malaria. Those were koala bears that ripped those people apart.
Koalas.
Dropped out of the trees, dismembered them on the way down.
I'm picturing like a sloth attack. It's like.
Oh God, that was just the creepiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Watching the giant sloth tear somebody apart.
Yeah.
Oh, that is weird.
Tried to unsee that. There you.
Yeah.
Well, what was that Disney movie for the
Sid the Sloth. You thinking of Ice Age?
no, the one where they were all like the rabbit was in was a cop or something, or
Zootopia?
they went to the DMV and it was
Yeah, it's a sloth.
and he's like, "Oh, we'll be out of here in no time." And he's like,
a man that worked at the City of Rock Island Post Office in Rock Island, Illinois on 11th Street. Go there if you want to see the real live turtle man. Because he moved. It was... Yeah, I swear people would go there to mail their letters just so they could stand out there and watch it through the window. I've never seen a human being move so deliberately slow in my entire life. And there, that's the first person in line. Yeah, I've been here about 45 minutes. No one was here when I got here.
Like Tim Conway's clock repairman.
Yes.
Don't let this. Watch out for the sun. Or for those of us who remember,
Can't take you people anywhere.
Those of us who remember Night Court.
Yeah.
I have a card that explains my condition. Under pocket. Oh.
Yep.
We're going to hell.
I can't take you people anywhere. Oh, we're sad.
There.
Where are we going, and why are we in this handbasket?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Me look down. DA, why's my right foot on a banana peel? And the other one's off in a hole.
Well, anyway, if you ever want to go see the real live turtle man, I'm pretty sure he had that disease. He probably had a card that explained his condition because
it's amazing.
Other pocket.
You sound exactly like
you.
DA, this is what the guy driving the Amtrak train feels like. There's fire and death and screaming, and all you can do is just shake your head.
Like the guy that, on the black box, you never hear the pilot say, my bad. I did it.
Oops.
Yeah, my question is, when you talk about the black box on the aircraft, that's the only thing that ever survives.
I know.
Why didn't they build the rest of the plane out of that?
Exactly.
Yeah,
or at
right.
least make it big enough that people could get into it.
Right.
The guy with the black box, he's like, or in the black box thing, the comedian, I think it's Tim Wilson. He says, people on the right side of the plane can see the earth coming up really fast. People on the left side of the plane, if you look out the right side of the plane, you can see the left wing. Thank you for flying Southwest. You could have picked anyone else, but you picked us.
One of life's great mysteries, just like why we drive on parkways and park on driveways.
Exactly. Wow. Good question. What's a near miss?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better if it was a near hit? But yeah, I agree.
I guess eventually we'll get to some Bigfoot in this Bigfoot conversation.
Oh gosh, yes, I'm so sorry.
An hour and 38 minutes before we derailed today, so that's pretty good.
Eventually
That's
we'll
not
get all
bad.
the way to the scene of the crash.
You got to be proud because I used to derail us in about 10 minutes when I was on the show regularly.
How far you think?
How
far you think we're going to go on one engine? All the way to the scene of the crash.
Exactly. I was in a plane crash. I was in Chicago, Illinois. I was sitting in the at the hangar, and the pilot announced, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be taking off. We'll be in whatever. And the plane began to move backwards, and bam! The pilot came on and said, ladies and gentlemen, we have some technical difficulties. We're going to stay where we're at. And I looked out my window because I love having the window seat. And I'm looking at the tail end of our plane sitting on top of the fuel tanker. He backed onto the fuel truck.
Well, probably a good thing he did that before you left the ground.
Well, people in the plane are like, oh my God, are they going to let us off? What's wrong? And the pilot keeps coming on and telling everybody it's a problem with the control panel. And I'm like, no, it's a problem with the pilot. You backed over the fuel truck.
Well, he ain't gonna tell you that.
No, of course not. But anyway, so finally, after about an hour and a half, people come and the wrecker comes out and hauls away the fuel truck, and they check out the plane, and we get to take off, and people are like, I don't think we're going to make it. I think we're going to crash. How far do you think we're going to go? And I said, all the way to the scene of the crash. And I thought that I was going to get thrown off the plane.
Yeah. The first time I ever flew, I flew out of Springfield, and at that time our airport was pretty small. It's still a very small airport. I think it's got like 12 gates now, and I think then it had like 4. And they could land small jets, and then but most of their planes were these little puddle jumpers that were like, twin engine, turboprop planes. And so I was flying on one of those little turboprops out to Dallas to pick up a real plane to go on the rest of my journey. And so, of course, I had a window seat because that's just what I happened to score that time. And I'm sitting right over the wing, and I'm watching the dude change the oil on the engines because I guess it was that time for that maintenance. And so, they changed the oil real quick. And so I'm pretty excited watching this guy change the oil on this engine. And he puts everything back together. And it took like 10, 15 minutes. It wasn't a big deal. But I'm watching intently because, it's my first time flying and it was cool. And so we get on the taxiway and we start going down the runway. As we accelerate to go down the runway, a bolt falls off of the door that holds covers the engine. Basically a bolt fell off the hood. And I just saw the bolt go. And of course the little gate's still closed, but it's like vibrating. And I am losing my mind. And I grab one of the flight attendants and I'm like, something just fell off of that engine. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, no, it fell off. If something fell, I'm like, I'm losing, it fell the F off. Something came out, And she's like, calm down. Would you like a drink? No, whatever just fell off the wing. It was only like an hour and a half flight, but I was like, I was losing my mind over it because some little piece
Your options are go get the thing that fell off the plane or give me a lethal dose of morphine because I'm not living through this plane crash.
It was a little bit of a moment.
Yeah.
And, and of course, the rest of the flight went uneventfully. We fly back, and I ended up scoring a little jet, almost like a Learjet, from Dallas back to Springfield. And it was like a freak ice storm came in. This was like late February. And so they decided they're going to fly us at really high altitude to try to get over the storm and then drop down through it. And of course, do you see the flight attendants strapping themselves into this 5-point harness, and they're hanging on, the lights are flashing. I'm like, I want that seat. That's the seat I need.
I don't mean to derail us again, but just real quick, DA, did you get a chance to look at that video I sent you?
Which video?
The guy doing the throat singing in the woods.
Oh, yes.
What did you think about that?
That's really, really weird.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned Mongolian throat singing because when I was talking to Doug Hychek, there's a producer of Monster Quest. He also hosts Untold Radio. And Doug and I have had some pretty great conversations, both on and off the air. But Doug was telling me about Snell Grove Lake up in northern Canada. And there's a cabin up there, and it is so far away you can only get there by float plane. If you went there by like pack horse, it would take you months. They fly hours in by float plane to get to this remote cabin. And they've done a couple episodes of Monster Quest there, and Doug's going back up there to do some research here soon. Well, him and I were talking, and he said, it was the weirdest thing. My son and I were out in a boat on Snell Grove Lake. He said, we were well away from the cabin. We were down near where this little creek feeds into the lake. He said, and I started hearing singing. I'm like, really, like legit singing? He goes, yeah, but it was a voice, but it wasn't really saying words. He said it was like these weird, he said it was kind of really pretty, but at the same time, it was this weird, like haunting call that I could hear echoing quite a ways over the lake. And I said, so he started to describing it. It would be high pitched and it would drop to lower pitches and stuff. I said, is it anything like culling? And he goes, what the hell is culling? And I said, it was an old Viking herding call that the women would use to call the cattle back from way back in these fjords. And it would echo through the mountains, and it had peaks and valleys, so it would project farther. And he goes, no, I've never heard of that. So I sent him a video of it, and we were video chatting, and I just kind of sat back and let him watch the video, and I see him do this number, and I'm like, is that it? He goes, DA, that is almost exactly it. And he said, "You're telling me that he said, you're telling me there was a Viking woman up there singing?" I said, "No, I don't think it was a Viking, but that type of call projects over very long distances." And he goes, "Oh my God, we may have just stumbled upon something entirely new."
Wow.
That's cool.
That's
So he's gonna try that the next time he's up at Snow Grove.
There's a lot of stuff going on up there.
Yes,
That was one of my favorite episodes of Monster Quest.
To circle back to this Moss Mountain thing, Dioma. So we've got the primary evidence of the writer of the story there. What did you say his name was? I'm sorry.
Thomas Nuttall.
Nuttall. Surely there's got to be some other type of primary evidence that existed from this. I mean, did anybody else that was on his expedition that didn't become Bigfoot fodder write anything, or any contemporary?
That's the frustrating.
Evidence?
That's the frustrating part. I don't know. For one thing, I don't know if he listed the men who did survive. They may have been illiterate in 1819. That would not have been an uncommon thing. I do know that he was interviewed. I'm assuming they were intelligent enough to interview the other members of his party. But I couldn't even, and I think DA was the same, I couldn't even find a list of the people on the expedition and the people who survived, much less any interviews or anything where any of them had written about what they saw. The only thing that I could say was that I did find an article where he wasn't exactly well liked by the people on the expedition. And that had a lot to do with his negative opinion of the French. And of course, Ohio River Valley, that entire area once belonged to France. So there were a lot of French descendants in that area. And then his opinion on Native Americans was highly offensive to a lot of the Europeans, people of European descent who were traveling with him, that, their attitude was scalp them all. And finally, he was an Englishman, and
Right.
we were 3 years out of a war with them. No, not even that, a year out of a war with them when he returned to America, and 3 years out when he embarked on the expedition. But who was saying that, or what the names of the people were, I couldn't find it. I would love to get my hands on the actual journal. And I have a list that's about 5 pages long of books that I intend to buy the minute I actually start being productive financially again. And
send
it
me
is high
the
on the
link to that
list.
journal. I might buy an electronic copy of it.
The links at the top of my notes that I gave you.
Oh, okay.
Assuming
All right.
I typed in right, the one it's a weird looking link. It's just like numbers and letters. I believe that one's the one that's the link to the journal. I couldn't find my link to the Library of Congress version of it, which is where I started.
Mm-hmm.
That was, well, where I started was P. Allen Smith talking about his Halloween thing. And then I went to find out who this, sadly, I didn't even know who he was, even though I'm familiar with the woodpecker that's named after him. And I started researching him, and I realized he was very extensive journals. Of course, that was his thing. He was there to identify flora and fauna. He named a lot of the species of plants that we now, he gave them their Latin names that are common in this country, that are natural to this country. And so he wrote what was considered the definitive book on the flora and fauna of the Appalachians. I can't even say it, Appalachians. And so he very well written, very well read, very well educated man, and clearly he ended up being a professor. Probably, I'm assuming it was at Penn State, and the reason I say that is because that's where Benjamin Smith Barton. I don't think his last name is Barton. I know it's Benjamin Smith something. Was a professor, and they became very good friends. And in fact, he became Nuttall's basically his mentor. And he's the one who encouraged him to go out on his expeditions. The first expedition he went on, like I said, was up into the Great Lakes and parts of Canada, and then down the Mississippi River partway with Lewis and Clark. And then another expedition, the one that really, although I think the Arkansas River expedition, which is what that one is called, definitely has the best story in it with the Moss Mountain thing, which you would not find Moss Mountain, I don't think, in that journal. It would be referenced as Beaver Island, or in an updated version, it might be Beaver Dam Island, because that's what the name of the island is today, is Beaver Dam Island. But I think of all of his expeditions, the one that fascinates me the most is the solo trip he took through the Appalachians. And also the other thing is he went to Hawaii very early on after Hawaii was discovered, and he was in South America. This man traveled extensively for his great love, and which was to find and identify flora and fauna. And so, and that again, to harken back to the Moss Mountain Massacre, is another reason why it's just so hard to accept that, oh, well, he was imagining things. This is not a man who would have imagined things.
Right.
I know he was not well liked by his fellow travelers, but I really do believe that has everything to do with his primary nationality, which was British, because he was traveling with a lot of Americans who had just fought a war with them, and he was around a lot of Frenchmen who had fought a very long war with them. And the French and the British still didn't have a high opinion of each other as late as 1819. So,
even later than that.
well, yeah, I mean, you have to remember the Napoleonic Wars. I think the treaty was signed in like 1803. And they went on forever, and there was a great hatred between the two countries.
Well, there was infighting even well into the 1830s.
Yeah, so it's really sad that that is what colored people's opinion of him on that particular expedition, because I think that if they'd really taken a look at who this person was, rather than what they think that he saw, if they concentrated more on the source of the story and less on trying to discredit it, they could have at least come up with a better excuse than bears and Native Americans, because that just doesn't ring true.
Well, they didn't have railroad to blame it on circus trains.
Oh, my show that was supposed to release today is, well, it was what I was talking about last time I was on your show, was the Werewolf Springs.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent a few minutes talking about the whole circus train and wild man thing. I mean, it's just, I just really want to scream at the world. It doesn't take much to add 1 + 1 to get 2. But if you don't put that plus sign in there, you're always going to see 11. It's just, it's really frustrating.
It makes you wonder just how bad was the security on those circus trains back then.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that somebody should have said, "Hey, we got a wild man on here. We are not putting putting him on a train, because there will be a crash and there will be a legend." And the only one, I'm sure that probably the wild men of Borneo traveled via circus train.
I'm sure.
But they were a pair of brothers who actually were from Ohio. Hiram and Barney Davis was their real name, not Wayno and Plutnor, which I always thought were kind of cool names. But and I'm sure, I know for a fact that Jacko
Mm-hmm.
was brought to wherever but most people think that that was just a story, that really wasn't an incident. So, okay, so now you got two different sets of wild men on trains, but one is really not wild men. It's a pair of brothers who were mentally disabled from Ohio. And the other one is a story that most people don't think even really happened. So, I mean, even people in the Bigfoot community discredit Jacko these days. So, how in the world are all these crazy wild men driving trains off the tracks and running into the woods? And it just doesn't ring true.
That doesn't add up.
No, you have to
Or yeah,
stop
the
and
gorilla
say,
that decided to walk on its hind feet and kill people.
yeah.
Of course, in the late 1800s, they still weren't convinced that mountain gorillas were even real.
No, and lowland gorillas had only been identified by skulls at that point. Well,
Right.
a little sooner, but so yeah, the mountain gorilla wasn't identified until 1903. So if you have that, then you really do have what you really have is an absence of common sense, an absence of the ability to apply logic to stories.
Right.
And the most frustrating part about it is when I say, well, I think it was a Bigfoot, then people immediately tell me, well, that's about as illogical as it comes. No, that is actually the only logical answer I can come up with, because it's the only thing that I know that walks around on 2 feet, that's bigger, way bigger than a man, to the point of being called a giant by the person who saw it, and is strong enough to rip a human being apart.
Right.
And would have possibly been in a group because there was more than one.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you go.
You've emphasized a couple of times that, because of his nationality and everything else, people just didn't particularly care for
The
Nuttall.
people on this expedition had a sour
Yeah.
taste in their mouth about it.
But benefit of the doubt, let's say the guy was a complete and total asshole. That doesn't make him less credible.
No, I mean,
There's a lot of people I don't care for, but they're still trustworthy.
well, I immediately think of Rene Dahinden. Everybody who knew Rene Dahinden thought he was the biggest jerk on the planet, but he did a lot towards research in the Bigfoot community.
Yeah.
Nobody could stand to be around him probably except a Bigfoot, but he was very knowledgeable. I mean,
Well,
you
in
know,
any field. I mean, Thomas Edison was a notorious jerk.
yes,
But look at what he did. Look at what we have because of his work. Chances are I would have punched him if I was in his presence. But
yeah. Well, that goes with any field. There, my husband has an expression: "Trust the art, not the artist," because I hate John Lennon, and I know I'm probably going to be crucified for that. But I think he was a horrible human being.
I'm right
But
there with you.
my husband's like, but look at his music, and I have to admit he wrote some really amazing music, so I have to, trust the art, not the artist, and that applies to any field, definitely, and it certainly applies here. But why I emphasize that is because I really do think that had a huge influence on why it was so easy to discredit him, because the people who survived with him weren't coming out of those woods exactly with the best opinion of him. And who knows, maybe if they did contradict him, and we'll never know because I can't find anything that says they contradicted or agreed. But even if they did contradict him, maybe they did so just out of spite because they were tired. By the time they hit the Mississippi River, those men were tired of him because all he'd done is complain about every time they had to pull into or stop at or whatever you would call it if you got off a boat, but into a trading post or something like that, and it was run by French people, he would start complaining. And and of course in the 21st century, you look back and you see a dandified Englishman pulling out his China tea set and eating his crumpets and and complaining, and that's not the case. That was not the case at all. In fact, there were that kind of an Englishman would never have crossed the pond to begin with.
Right.
He would never have been in this country to start with. But they were definitely angry with him. They were tired of listening to complaints. Then And I'm sure that they were looking at him with, they were giving him the side eye because this guy was their enemy
Yeah.
a few years earlier. He was
Yeah.
on the other side.
Well, and at the end of the expedition, let's say it all went down as we're, positing that it did. If you're one of the five lucky bastards that survived, you're not going to have a real high regard for him either. You know,
No.
it'd be the whole, the Laurel and Hardy routine. It's another fine mess you've gotten us into.
Exactly.
They're not going to be big fans.
No.
Yeah.
They're going to resent that he took them into a place that got them killed, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
Or got their friends killed.
Yeah.
Traditionally, people who know that much about, just like you said, he's probably one of the foremost experts on botany. I'm sure he let everybody on that expedition know every time he had a chance about how smart he was.
I'm sure he probably did.
Most people like that, not all, but a good many of them who know a lot about a field like that are insufferable pricks. Just because
that's because they know a lot about the field, but they don't know anything about living or people.
Well, and a lot of them have dedicated their whole life to learning about this field, and they kind of lack in the social skills. And it may not be that they're typically, or that they're trying to be that way. It's just they don't know how to interact with people. And most normal people who know a lot about a lot of different things don't get along with people like that because they're like, oh no.
It was the pith helmet and the voice. Oh no, that's not. I don't stop with the French.
Yeah, I was just about to say insert DA's annoying English professor accent, and that's what you got. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, I totally understand that, and that's why I keep stressing that, and I keep pointing that out because he was dealt an unfair hand to begin with, and probably dealt it to himself.
Well,
I'm not saying
even just the culture today. I mean, it's like when I was in the UK 5 or 6 years ago. I got to have some really cool experiences, but the personality, the culture was different. To them, I was a colonial, even though it's been 200 something years, and to me, they had no measurable sense of humor because their sense of humor was so much drier than ours. And it did make them bad people. It didn't make me a bad person, but there was a culture clash that just didn't quite sync up. And I wasn't floating down a river getting killed by Bigfoot. That would definitely change your whole perspective of the whole thing.
I do that entirely.
Exactly. I totally agree. I'm a total Anglophile. I could easily transfer myself across the pond and be happy. And even I realized that in that case, I would still struggle with culture.
I'm with you. I'm a huge Anglophile too, and I got to meet this really neat guy when we were in Cornwall, and I became friends with him after the fact. And he's a retired Scotland Yard detective, and he had such an understated way of talking about everything. Like he was talking about the conflict with Northern Ireland, and he referred to it as the struggles. Okay,
yeah.
From what I studied in the history book, it was a bunch of terrorist attacks and murders, but it was the struggles. And his whole understated way of talking about everything, I was like, if I wasn't open-minded and wasn't trying to embrace the culture, I'm like, this guy'd be a prick. You're just listening to him. But putting myself in his shoes, I'm like, first of all, the guy was hysterical. He had a wonderful sense of humor, but it was not an American sense of humor. And his whole understated way of speaking of things, it was the culture. Nothing wrong with it. It was just so very different that if you weren't being open-minded about it, I could see how it would rub people the wrong way.
I wish I knew if my husband was watching, because there's a documentary, and I promise you I will go back to Moss Mountain as soon as oh, darn it, as soon as I can, but it was I know what it was. If you ever get the chance, Steve, look up the Miami Show Band.
Okay.
It doesn't sound Irish at all, but there's a documentary on YouTube about them. And it is a very sad story. And it has to do with the struggles.
Okay. I'll have to look it up.
So, yeah. And I had to think about it. It's Miami Show Band is the name of the band, which has nothing to do with Miami, Florida. Okay, I'm sorry. Now, back to Bigfoot. As you guys know, my eyes start burning at around 10 o'clock. And I'm going to have to leave you and let you have your fun by yourself. The ladies are going to leave the lounge.
We'll let you give us your website and stuff at your information one more time, and we'll let you call it a night, and we'll start our Ozarks good night.
Well, you can find me at Neoma Finn Open to Doubt on YouTube. You can find my Facebook page, Neoma Finn Open to Doubt. I am on Twitter at Neoma Finn, and I'm on what's that little 1-minute video show? TikTok.
TikTok.
Neoma Finn. So I'm at all those places. If you have a great story, email me at neomafinn@gmail.com. Pretty much if you put Neoma Finn at anything, you'll find me somewhere. I haven't got my website up and going, but I eventually will. You can, if you want to purchase my book, it's a novel about a dogman attack, kind of, sort of. Got a dogman in it and a serial killer and lots of fun people. And you can find that on Amazon by searching Neoma Finn, The Beast Remains. And there you go.
Sounds awesome. Well, thank you for hanging out and spending time with us.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
You were awesome as always, and a hoot and a half.
Well, the last time I talked to you, Naomi, you were still working on the book. I'm so excited. This is the first I've heard that it's come out. I will have to make that purchase at post haste.
Yeah. I'm so excited about that, but I have another. I'm working on 2 others at the moment. I'm working on, in fact, Martin Groves is going to help me with my research on the
Martin's
LBO
an awesome
one.
guy.
Yeah, and of course, then I've got a second novel coming out involving a group of kids, so it'll be interesting.
Sounds good.
Sounds awesome. Look forward to it.
It'll probably be better than the one I put out. But anyway, thanks, guys, for having me. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for being
good
on.
to talk to you again, Steve. I haven't seen you in forever. It's like old home week when I come here.
Well, like I said, my work schedule gets a little bit ridiculous, and unfortunately, keeping the day job, so to speak, even though it's a night job, interferes with some of the
Fun
other stuff.
Yeah,
it interferes with the fun stuff. I feel like I don't have a whole lot of life anymore, but we do our best.
I hear that. But it was good to see you. Robbie, it was good to see you too.
You too, Miss Naomi.
And as always, DA, always a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Always happy to have you. You're welcome anytime.
Good night, guys.
Good night, Naomi. Have a great night. Thank you again. She's so awesome.
I'm excited to hear that her book came out. That's pretty cool.
Heck yeah. Hey, well, now's a good time to mention our affiliate links.
Yep.
What do y'all think?
I think that would be a great thing.
Well, since he couldn't be here, there is a way we can hear from Mr. Doc himself. Remember, folks, we are an affiliate with Scallywag Tactical, and I will post the link, or actually, Tombstone, if you'll post the Dark Angel Medical link in the chat, I'm just going to play a word from the man himself.
Hey, everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with D.A. Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And that's the Kit for Life guarantee on there as well. If you ever use that kit to save somebody's life, they will replenish the kit for free for life. And I'll throw that up there real quick. That's his YouTube channel, but use that tiny URL link and the discount code, and that will will credit us as being the ones that sent it. Just head over to use that tiny URL link. It's in the chat. You can just click right on it and use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your order. And if you put Wild Hunt or Team Odin in the comments at checkout, they'll put one of those little Team Odin rockers on your kit. And while we're talking about the affiliates, don't forget to check out Scallywag Tactical. Scallywag's got some of the best knives in the business. Just absolutely fantastic knives. And we're all reaching for our Scallywags. That's the Dew Claw. If you want that knife that Robbie's got, the Dew Claw, it is being discontinued. It's get it now or it's gone forever. I've got one here called the Valhalla. Really like this knife. Absolutely very sharp knife. All of Scallywag's knives are just nothing but top quality. Absolutely fantastic blades. They've got everything from pocket knives to kitchen knives to fixed blade hunting and survival knives. Just absolutely fantastic blades. And if you you can use that link there, or you can go to scallywagtactical.com, use the discount code DARoberts10 for 10% off your entire order, and let them know we sent you. And let's show a little love to Scallywag and to Dark Angel because they're both veteran-owned companies, and we're all about supporting our veterans here.
Can we do another demonstration for DA on the sharpness?
Sure. Yeah.
Straight out of the box. Haven't done anything to it.
Lift it up a little higher, buddy.
Sorry, I was hidden behind the.
Oh my goodness!
I'm starting to run out of places. We've done this.
Maybe you just need a new sheet of paper.
Yep, I do.
That's wild.
That thing is wicked sharp right out of the box.
So, yeah, didn't do anything to it. That's how it came out of the box.
That's impressive.
And even their pocket knives, some of them are on sale for as little as like $18. Just absolutely fantastic knives.
Yeah, I carry one of their mini jacks. It's one of their cheaper knives. I think I picked it up for $21 or something like that. That's my everyday carry knife. Because working as a nurse, I don't need a Dew Claw or a Bounty on my hip, and I have no complaints. I've not sharpened it yet, and that thing goes through hell. And in the way I look at it, if I happen to break it, well, one, if I happen to break like the tip or something off, they'll put a new tip on it for me because they stand by their stuff. But if I already lose it, I'm out $21. Big deal. That's a dinner.
This is my everyday carry. This
one's the Jolly Roger.
This is the Jolly Roger.
I've got that one too.
This one comes in a dark handle and a blue handle. Other than that, they're pretty much identical. These knives are just wicked sharp. Really wicked sharp. And I cut everything with mine. I mean, I cut packages open. I cut twine with it. I cut, anything I'm out in the yard, I need to cut something. This is my everyday utility knife, and it just takes a beating like no other knife I've ever owned. Just absolutely fantastic, high quality knife. And if I lose it, I'll just replace it because it's like a $30 knife. I mean, that's for the quality you get. That is an amazingly good price for that pocket knife. Oh, that's an awesome one right here. Tim Swearinger says, was a big Boker fan until I bought a knife from Scallywag for a quarter of the price. Will not buy any other brand now. Told them in the review that D.A. Roberts sent me. Well, that is awesome, man. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I am not kidding when I tell you that these knives are second to none in quality. I've had Gerber knives. Bokers are good knives. I've had bench-made knives. I've had Gerbers. I've had a lot of expensive knives over the years, and these knives will stand up in quality compared to any knife I've ever owned. David Bice says, DA, is that the one you had at Lexington? Yeah, I think it was this one that I was carrying at Lexington. But they're pocket knives. Again, you can get some of them for as little as $12-13, and just amazingly good knives to have. Just absolutely top quality knives. Can't go wrong with a good Scallywag. And if you're going to be going anywhere, camping, hunting, fishing, hiking, backpacking, a good blade is a must-have. And take a first aid kit, because if you're going any place, especially if you're going to be going out looking in some of these areas where cryptids are, you may or may not have cell service. So 911 may not be something you can even get.
Well, when you're dealing with EMTs and paramedics, it's kind of like the jokes they make about law enforcement. No offense, Robbie and DA, but when seconds count, the EMTs are only minutes away.
Sometimes
You've
longer,
gotta,
depending on where you're at. If you're in some
well,
rural sections of the county, they might be 45 minutes to an hour away.
yeah, but same point. If you aren't there to save yourself, it's going to be a little late by the time the medics get there.
Exactly. Tim Swearingen says Scallywag is 10 times better quality than Boker, and it's not the price, it's the craftsmanship that counts. Yeah, every knife I've gotten from Scallywag has just been top quality. Fantastic knives. Boys, you think of anything else we need to cover?
Mm-mm.
No, I think we pretty much hit.
So I'm fresh out of anything creative, but that's no new thing.
Folks, go over to Dixie Cryptid, Cameron Buckner's channel. He just released the first couple of installments of Apex Predator Wolf Moon in audio. It's going to be a 6-part series. The rest will be released over the next 4 days. And shortly on its heels will be Codename Wild Hunt, Operation Blood Eagle. So that one's coming too. Him and I are going to be working on other projects. We've got a lot of stuff that I'm going to be working hard with Dixie Cryptid. Cam's pretty excited about the project I told him about, the Western cryptid story that I'm working on now. First of a series. The series is going to be called Dark Frontiers. This is Dark Frontiers First Hunt is the first name of the book, and it's already progressing. Robbie's one of my alphas. He's been enjoying it. Steve's an alpha, but I don't know if he's caught up on it.
I am not. Unfortunately, I have been lagging behind on those duties. Unfortunately, I suck.
Oh, you've been working a lot of hours. I got you. But you did get to read Demons Part 1.
I did. I really enjoyed that. I was really sad to hear it was only Part 1 and there was more to the story that I hadn't gotten to read yet. But I think it's going to be pretty awesome. When are you thinking of finishing the rest of that, and when is it going to be put out?
Probably going to look at having Demons Part 2 done sometime this month. When I've got Demons, I've got another story. I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head. It's the one set down in Moon Valley, Robbie. I can't think of the name of the title.
The one with the two cops and they end up on the bridge.
Right, that's the one.
What was the name of that one? Because I really liked that one. I can't remember what the title of that one was. I can tell you the story.
Hold on, my computer's got a bad case of the slows.
Like Night of the Dogman or some.
That sounds right. I will know for sure here in just a second. Wrath of the Dogman.
I knew something with Dogman. Yes, that was really good.
For those of you who might be members of the Patreon community, those are available for free to read exclusively on the Patreon community right now. Both of those short stories, I really shouldn't call them short stories. They're both 15 to 20,000 words. They're novellas, really. I'm gonna, when I get one or two more of that size done, I'm gonna release it like I did the other compilation of short stories. I called it Codename Wild Hunt, Operation Lily, and other stories. I'm gonna release Demons, Wrath of the Dogman, and a couple other short stories as one novel, and it'll probably be 60 to 70,000 words just made of these novellas. Steve Padden says, Steve, have you voluntold Steve about April 1st yet? No, I haven't. I'll tell him about it here shortly. Tombstone said, Demons was awesome. Looking forward to part 2. I'm excited where this one's going to go. It's going to involve more of the team, and you're going to get to see more of the B-list characters. It's not going to be Clark and the big names like Gideon. It's going to be, some of the characters that don't get as much face time. Then you're going to, then we've got another short story in the works. This will probably be included in the same one. I don't have a working title yet, but it's going to be Doc and the Bowie brothers from Operation Lily. Those guys are going to be coming back. I really like those characters. Look to see those characters again, and those same two characters in Wrath of the Dogman are also going to be making an appearance again. So again, if you want to read those, if you're a member of the Patreon community, both of those stories are up, along with several other short stories. If you're a member of the Patreon community, if you're not a member of the Patreon community and you'd like to help support the DA verse, there's quite a bit of material on the Patreon that's available nowhere else. Several short stories. There's a couple other short stories that I haven't released anywhere else yet. That are going to be included as part of some of these upcoming ones. So hopefully you guys, if you like that kind of content and you want to help support the DA verse, head over to the patreon.com/DA Roberts Author and check those out, and you can help shape the future of the DA verse. Plus, you'll get a lot of writing content that's not available anywhere else. I will eventually be releasing those, but I'm putting it up on the Patreon as a thank you to them for all their support. AAO says DAL joined Patreon. Well, appreciate you, man. He said, just figured YouTube out. I'm old, but we'll figure out how to navigate there. It's pretty simple. It's not real difficult. Just go to patreon.com/DA Roberts Author and just pick the tier that you're interested in, and just kind of go from there. Miss Lene just posted the link to the newest book that just released last week. It's the latest in the Codename Wild Hunt series, Codename Wild Hunt Death in Dyatlov Pass. Some big revelations in this book. A lot of action in this book. I'm setting the groundwork for something even bigger. There's going to be a couple new series added in the near future. Dark Frontiers obviously is going to be the first of that. I've got another series that's kind of in the works. It's called Project Olympus, and it's an offshoot of the Codename Wild Hunt series. And I've also got a new group that's going to be added to the Wild Hunt universe. It's Wild Hunt Team 6, and it's an underwater team. So look for the next Codename Wild Hunt book to be set underwater. Elijah Gosh, hey G, good to see you here, brother.
When you purchase your Death in Dyatlov Pass, grab yourself a bright light and a well-lit room and a whoopee, and you're set to read it.
Then all you need is a Morky to keep you warm.
Yeah, exactly. Sadly, I lost my whoopee to my Morky.
But folks, thank you guys for joining us tonight. We had an awesome time. Moss Mountain is something I'm going to revisit. It's not that far from here, and hopefully I can talk the wife into taking a weekend and going down there and let me go stomping around out in the woods out there. Got my next round of shots coming up probably later this month, and if those work as they're expecting, I might be pain med free for the next couple of years, which would be so freaking awesome. Karen Paulson says ordered our whoobies today. Those of you who have been in the military know what a whoobie is. If you're not familiar, when you read Death in Dyatlov, you'll get introduced to the whoobie. It's the soldier's best friend. I've got 2 of them on the shelf behind my green screen.
As DA was talking, I lost mine to my dog today. So 12 pounds, and he stole it.
Well, he is kind of in charge.
That he is.
So again, folks, thank you guys for joining us tonight. I don't have the show set up for Wednesday night yet, but yeah, look for our posts about that. That'll be coming up in the next day or two. We'll get that all set up. I've got to still talk to Robbie and the other folks about what we're going to be doing on Wednesday night. So look for that one to be popping up in your feeds in the next couple of days. And again, thank you guys for spending your evening with us. We had an awesome time tonight. Miss Naomi is always an awesome guest. We're so happy anytime she gets to join us. And Moss Mountain is an interesting topic, and it's something I want to dig more into, because it's all the classic elements of a Bigfoot story, yet it was suppressed for so many years. So hopefully we'll find find some all new material and have another show on that in the near future. Trying to think, anything else?
Nothing I can
Well,
think of.
before we go, I'm going to play my book promo. I have a book promo video. I'm going to play that, and then we'll start closing the show out, folks.
From the mind of author D.A. Roberts. Cryptids. Lakeview Man. Apex Predator. Codename Wild Hunt. Zombies. The Ragnarok Rising Saga. Science fiction and fantasy. Lost Legion. Find them all at daroberts.net or amazon.com.
I like that commercial. Miss Naoma made that for me.
That's awesome.
And she did a really good job. Folks, again, thank you guys for spending time with us. Go over to Cam Buckner's Dixie Cryptid and check out the first 2 installments of of Apex Predator Wolf Moon are available. And it's not just a chapter at a time. It's several chapters. It's an hour-long video each time. It's going to be a 6-part release. The first 2 are out now if you want to listen to them. The other 4 will drop over the next 4 days. On the heels of that, he's going to have Codename Wild Hunt, Operation Blood Eagle, and we've got a lot of other projects in the works together as well. So hope you guys will go check that out. If you like the Codename Wild Hunt books, the first 2 of the Wild Hunt series, Odin's Call and Curse of the Wendigo, are both already available in audio format on the Dixie Cryptid channel. So hope you guys will check that out. And again, thank you guys for spending your evening with us. We had a wonderful time, and we look forward to doing it again on Wednesday night. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend and come back safe and be with us again on Wednesday night. So again, keep William Nighthawk, Miss Lene Perkins, Pat Kennedy, and keep them all in your prayers, as they're all still dealing with some pretty serious health issues. And send a few positive vibes my way for those shots that I'm supposed to get the rest of this month, later this month, and hope all that goes well on that as well. So. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. We'll see you guys on Wednesday night. And remember, just because people claim it doesn't exist doesn't mean it's not out there. That noise you heard in your backyard might not be a squirrel. So hope you guys have an awesome night. Thank you guys again for being with us, and God bless everybody. Good night, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Night.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.